He was Puerto Rico's pride, a warrior with thunder in both fists. Felix Tito. Trinidad wasn't just a boxing champion. He was a national icon, but now, at 52 years old, the man who once lit up arenas with his smile and power has vanished from the public eye. And according to recent reports, the silence isn't just intentional, it's alarming. Trinidad is said to be in critical condition, battling a serious medical crisis that his family has kept private. There are no press releases, no interviews, no photos, just silence. Once adored for his heart inside the ring, he now faces what may be his final and most personal fight. This is the story of a legend who conquered the world, then disappeared from it. Felix Tito. Trinidad was born on January 10, 1973 in Fajardo, Puerto Rico, into a family where boxing wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life. His father, Felix Trinidad Sr., had been a professional fighter himself, and quickly took on the role of trainer for his son. From the time Tito could walk, he was being molded into a champion. Gym was his second home, while most kids his age were riding bikes or playing ball. Tito was perfecting his jab, working the heavy bag, and absorbing the mentality of a fighter. He turned professional in 1990 at the astonishingly young age of 17. By the time he was 20, he had already captured the IBF welterweight championship. Defeating Maurice Blocker in just 2 rounds, the victory wasn't just a win. It was an announcement a star had arrived, and he was carrying the hopes of an island on his shoulders. From that point on, Trinidad was more than a fighter. He was Puerto Rico's son. His style was electric, aggressive, powerful, relentless. He didn't just box, he hunted. He came forward with combinations that exploded like fireworks, and even when knocked down, as he often was, he got up like a warrior. Possessed fans loved him for it. He wasn't about perfection, he was about heart, and that heart made him beloved by an entire nation. He often said, "When I fight for Puerto Rico. I fight for my people," and he meant it. Every punch, every round, every walk to the ring was for the island that raised him. Puerto Rico didn't just cheer for Tito, they lived through him. Throughout the 1990s, Felix Trinidad's name became synonymous with dominance. After winning the welterweight title in 1993, he defended it 15 consecutive times, an extraordinary feat that showcased his consistency, endurance, and hunger. He was never one to duck a challenge. In fact, he welcomed them. He chased greatness with every fight, and more often than not, he found it. His battles read like a who's who of elite competition. In 1999, he faced Oscar de la Hoya in a bout dubbed the Fight of the Millennium. It was a tactical high-stakes war that drew millions of viewers. Trinidad walked away with a controversial majority decision victory, but in the eyes of his fans, he had just cemented himself as a legend. That same year, he moved up in weight and continued to crush expectations. His 2000 war with Fernando Vargas was brutal, with both men hitting the canvas. But Trinidad emerged victorious with a dramatic TKO in the 12th round. Trinidad's punching power was legendary. Of his 42 professional wins, 35 came by way of knockout. But it wasn't just the knockouts. It was the way he fought. He brought fire to every ring. He stepped in, a refusal to back down, and a willingness to walk through the storm to deliver damage. He wasn't just a champion. In one division, Tito became a 3-weight world champion, winning titles in welterweight, super welterweight, and middleweight, a rare accomplishment that few fighters achieve, and no matter the weight, no matter the opponent, he always brought that signature, Puerto Rican pride, into the ring. Fans didn't just call him Tito, They called him El Campeón del Pueblo, the people's champion, and for Puerto Ricans both on the island and around the world, he was a symbol of pride, brill and glory as Felix Trinidad's career soared. So did the scrutiny his 1999 bout against Oscar de la Hoya was meant to be his defining moment on the world stage, a clash between two undefeated champions in their prime. The fight was tactical tense and surprisingly cautious. De La Hoya dominated the early rounds with movement and jabs, while Trinidad surged in the later rounds with pressure and aggression. When the final bell rang, the judges awarded Tito a majority decision victory. The result sparked outrage. Many felt De La Hoya had done enough to win. Others saw it as a deserved win for Trinidad's relentless pace. Either way, the decision split the boxing world and became one of the most controversial in recent memory. Then, in 2001, Trinidad moved up to middleweight to face Bernard Hopkins for the unified championship. It was a mega fight hyped as a battle for supremacy, but it was also where the cracks and Tito's invincibility began to show. Hopkins executed a masterclass of discipline, precision, and strategy. Trinidad's aggression was neutralized, and in the 12th round he was knocked down and ultimately stopped for the first time in his career. It was a stunning end to an era, and the moment many pinpoint as the end of Trinidad's prime. In the lead-up to that fight, controversy emerged when Bernard Hopkins' camp raised concerns about Trinidad's hand-wrapping techniques. Though no official wrongdoing was confirmed, the pre-fight tension added a cloud to the proceedings. Shadow of those accusations combined with the brutal defeat marked a turning point in public perception, though he continued to fight sporadically, including high-profile matches against Winky Wright and Roy Jones Jr. Trinidad never regained his previous form. He officially retired in 2008 with a final record of 42 wins and 3 losses. But in Puerto Rico, none of that diminished his legacy. Trinidad was still revered as a hero, win or lose. He had carried the flag with pride. He had given his people unforgettable nights, epic battles, and an identity in the sport of boxing. After hanging up the gloves in 2008, Felix Trinidad vanished from the spotlight. Unlike many retired boxers who reinvent themselves as trainers, commentators, or personalities, Tito took a different path. He disappeared. No social media, no interviews, no commentary gigs. He made very few public appearances, and even those were brief and carefully managed. Fans were left wondering, where did he go? At first, the silence was interpreted as peace. His family occasionally commented that he was enjoying time with loved ones, embracing a quiet life far from the cameras. He's finally resting. One family member reportedly said in 2012 he gave everything to the sport. Now he's just being Tito, the man, not the fighter. But as years passed, that silence grew louder and more unsettling. Trinidad was absent from major boxing celebrations. He skipped several Hall of Fame events, including those honoring his former opponents and contemporaries. He didn't appear at boxing conventions or legends exhibitions, even in Puerto Rico. Where former athletes are regularly honored, Tito remained unseen. The few images that surfaced were either years old or from the obscure small gatherings, and even those stopped after the mid-2010s. By the late 2010s, fans began to speculate. Was he ill? Was he simply choosing solitude? Some worried about his finances, others about his mental or physical health. Despite being inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. In 2014, his absence at the ceremony raised eyebrows. The boxing world celebrated him, but he wasn't there to receive the ovation. His legendary status remained untouched, but concern crept in. People began asking, not about his legacy but his well-being. A fighter who once wore his heart on his gloves now kept everything locked away. The silence was no longer serene, it was haunting. In 2014, fans were shocked when reports emerged that Felix Trinidad, once a multimillionaire and one of the highest-paid boxers of his era, had lost nearly all of his fortune. The details were jarring. Trinidad had entrusted his money to a financial advisor and invested heavily in Puerto Rican government bonds. When the island's debt crisis spiraled out of control, those bonds became worthless. Just like that, an estimated $63 million was gone. Court documents revealed that Tito had become entangled in a web of lawsuits and legal filings. As he tried to recover what he could, his longtime financial advisor, who had been with him for most of his career, was named in multiple suits. Trinidad's legal team argued that the fighter had been misled, that he never truly understood the risk involved. For years, his money had been slowly bleeding out of accounts he rarely checked. When he finally realized the extent of the damage, it was too late. Despite attempts to seek restitution, the reality was grim. Most of the lost money was never recovered. The fighter, who once drew crowds in Las Vegas and Madison Square Garden, was now fighting in courtrooms, desperately trying to piece together a financial future. The public began to worry in Puerto Rico, where Tito had long been treated. As royalty fans were stunned. How could this happen to a man who gave the island so many reasons to celebrate rumors, spread of depression, withdrawal, and a noticeable change in his demeanor? Friends and former colleagues began to speak in hushed tones. One source close to the family told local media, "Tito's not the same. He's quiet now. Tired, you can see the sadness in his eyes." What made it worse was that Trinidad never publicly addressed the issue. He didn't hold press conferences or offer interviews. He simply faded into the background. National hero, seemingly brought to his knees not by an opponent in the ring, but by a world he wasn't prepared to navigate. From 2017 to 2024, Felix Trinidad effectively disappeared from public life. No interviews, no press appearances, no charity events, no award shows, and no commentary during major boxing matches. The once charismatic champion, known for his warmth and connection to fans, became a ghost in the boxing world. This absence did not go unnoticed whenever Puerto Rican fighters were honored, when Miguel Cotto retired, when Hall of Fame inductions occurred, when great fights were hosted in San Juan. One name was always missing. Trinidad, his absence felt louder than his presence ever had. Forums lit up with speculation. YouTube channels asked the same question: where is Tito? Some fans believed he had moved away, perhaps to the Dominican Republic or even to the United States, seeking privacy far from the spotlight. Others whispered about health issues, neurological decline, depression, or something worse. Theories ranged from plausible to wild, but no one knew the truth. The family wasn't talking. Journalists who reached out received polite declines or silence. Even some former friends and sparring partners admitted they hadn't heard from him in years. The mystery only deepened with time. Occasional blurry photos would surface online, someone claiming to have seen him at a local store, at a clinic, or driving through a small Puerto Rican town, but nothing could be confirmed. There was no official statement, no denial of illness, no affirmation of health, just silence for fans who grew up idolizing Trinidad. It felt surreal. How could someone so vibrant, so present, simply vanish? And yet, as the years passed and the headlines faded, his disappearance became part of the narrative. Tito wasn't just missing from boxing, he was missing from life. A once proud champion who had thrilled millions now lived in mystery. and the silence was beginning to sound like something more serious. In March 2025, the boxing world was shaken when confidential sources leaked that Felix Tito Trinidad had been hospitalized in what was described as serious to critical condition, while no official statement was released by the family. Whispers from inside Puerto Rico's tight-knit boxing circles began to emerge, suggesting the former champion was facing a grave health crisis. The lack of details only fueled public concern. Reporters reached out to relatives, former trainers, and friends, but all inquiries were met with silence or vague responses. And, perhaps most telling of all, no denial came. Speculation ran rampant. Some claimed Trinidad was suffering from complications tied to chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a degenerative brain disease common among athletes who've suffered repeated blows to the head. Others believed it was related to long-term depression and the physical toll of years spent in brutal wars inside the ring. Still others mentioned the financial stress he endured after losing his fortune, suggesting the emotional impact may have compounded a pre-existing condition. Puerto Rican media outlets began airing tribute segments and issuing prayers for Tito banners across their screens. Headlines read more like eulogies than updates. Despite the lack of confirmation, fans and reporters alike seemed to brace themselves for the worst in the global boxing community. The response was swift and emotional. Promoters, former opponents, and champions young and old took to social media. Oscar De La Hoya, who famously fought Tito in a 1999 super fight, tweeted a simple message, sending strength to Felix Trinidad, a true warrior in and out of the ring. Miguel Cotto called him our champion forever, while international stars like Manny Pacquiao and Jeanette Golovkin expressed sadness over the reports for many fans. It was surreal. A man who once embodied Puerto Rican pride, who stepped into the ring like a hero out of folklore, was now reduced to rumors and whispers. The great Felix Trinidad, unreachable, unseen, and possibly on the verge of leaving this world, had become the subject of hush prayers and uncertain headlines, and still his family remained silent, despite the swirling reports and growing concern. Those who know Felix Trinidad well say his great. The first battle hasn't been fought in front of cameras or in front of a roaring crowd. It's been happening quietly in the shadows for years. Former trainers, sparring partners, and childhood friends describe a man who was still mentally fighting. Long after the final bell of his professional career rang, one former trainer shared, "He is still Tito inside. He still has the heart. But this battle, this one's different. He doesn't want people to see him." Like this, that sentiment echoed among those who knew him best. Felix was always a private man, someone who cherished the admiration of fans, but guarded his personal life with a fierce sense of pride, even in his prime. He was never one for spectacle outside the ring, and now, as he faces what may be the biggest test of his life, that instinct to remain private has only grown stronger. Sources close to the family have hinted that Trinidad hasn't wanted the public to witness his current state. Whether he's confined to a hospital bed, dealing with neurological decline, or grappling with depression, the man who once carried the hopes of an island now prefers solitude. Friends say he doesn't want sympathy. He wants dignity. He wants people to remember the champion, not the patient. But for fans, that silence is heartbreaking. The roar of the crowd, the signature fists raised in victory, the proud waving of the Puerto Rican flag. Those images still live vividly in people's minds, and the idea that their champion is quietly fading away from the cameras and the cheers cuts deep. "He never stopped being a fighter," said one close friend. "Even now, With all the pain, he's still swinging. Just not in the way we used to see. That's the paradox of Felix Trinidad. He represented strength, joy, and national pride. But behind all that, there was always a quiet man, fighting a private war no one could see across Puerto Rico, an island known for its passion, resilience, and pride. A deep sadness now looms. Felix Tito. Trinidad isn't just a sports figure. He's a national treasure from San Juan to Ponce. From the barber shops to the boxing gyms, people speak his name with reverence. His victories were Puerto Rico's victories. His walk to the ring draped in the flag was a source of national identity. Now, as rumors of his critical condition continue to swirl, the island holds its breath, afraid of what may come next. Trinidad's rise in the 90s wasn't just about athleticism. It was symbolic at a time when Puerto Rico faced economic hardship and identity challenges. On the global stage, Tito represented hope. He was the kid from Fajardo who punched his way to the top. He reminded Puerto Ricans, but they were not small, not invisible. His hands became instruments of pride, his voice. After every fight echoed unity, fans have begun gathering in plazas and churches, holding impromptu prayer vigils online. Forums are flooded with tribute videos, fight highlights, and messages of support. Radio stations across the island replay his most iconic boots, his war with Fernando Vargas, split decision win over De La Hoya, the comeback against Mallorca, and each time they do, they close with the line that made millions weep. Puerto Rico. Loja si parte, Puerto Rico. I did it for you. That phrase, now played like a national anthem, hits differently. In 2025, it carries not just nostalgia, but fear, because for many this feels like the final round moment when a legend who once stood tall with fists raised may be quietly fading into the shadows. But even in grief, Puerto Rico's love has not wavered. If anything, it has grown louder, because Tito didn't just box. He belonged to the people, and now the people are letting him know they're still in his corner. If this truly is the end of Felix Trinidad's remarkable journey, then it's not the kind of ending defined by sorrow, it's defined by love, because what Tito leaves behind is more than belts, trophies, or knockouts. He leaves behind a legacy built on heart resilience and cultural pride, a legacy that goes beyond the boxing ring and into the soul of a people who saw in him their hopes, their fight, their reflection in a sport often marred by scandals and ego. Trinidad stood apart. He wasn't flashy outside the ring. He didn't trash talk. He didn't crave headlines. He simply fought, and he fought with everything for his country, for his family, for his pride, even in defeat. He carried himself with the dignity of a true champion, that humility, that fire, that quiet strength. It made him more than just a boxer. It made him a symbol today, as the boxing world reflects on his contributions, and Puerto Rico prepares for the worst. If there's a feeling in the air, a heavy, sacred stillness, because this isn't just about losing a fighter. It's about saying goodbye to a piece of the island spirit. It's about honoring a man who made us all believe in something bigger than ourselves. Felix Tito. Trinidad didn't just fight in the ring. He fought for his people, for his name, for his pride. He didn't duck challenges. He didn't chase fame. He carried the weight of a nation on his back and never once complained. And now, if this is the end, it's not defeat. It's just the final round of a champion who never gave less than everything, no matter what comes next. Trinidad's story won't be written in silence. It will be echoed in cheers, remembered in tears, and carried in the hearts of every Puerto Rican who ever stood up and shouted his name.